In this video, we're going to be discussing The Minority Mindset by Jaspreet Singh. And for those who don't know, Jaspreet Singh is an accountant turned real estate investor who now helps other people become financially free through his social media channels. He has one channel called Minority's Mindset, where he talks about everything in relation to building generational wealth. As a person of color, or someone from a minority background, but he also has another channel called Mind Over Money, where he dives deeper into more advanced financial topics that are not often discussed in mainstream media. Both channels are fantastic resources if you want to learn how to take control of your finances and build long-term wealth. The book itself is written with a very conversational tone. It reads almost like you're having a conversation with Yas, as opposed to reading a traditional business book. The book is split up into 3 parts, with each part building upon the last. In part 1, Yas walks us through some basic concepts that form the foundation of his contrarian wealth-building strategies. In part 2, he discusses some of his more advanced strategies that will require you to think outside of the box. And in part 3, he brings it all together and shows you exactly how to put these strategies into action so that you can start building wealth for yourself and your family. Let's jump right into it. Chapter 1, Controlling Your Thoughts. First off, let's talk about Chapter 1, which is titled Controlling Your Thoughts. It's not really a chapter about money, but more so a discussion about mindset. And that's because without the right mindset, it doesn't matter what financial strategies you try to implement. You won't be able to stick with them long enough to see results. So it's important to get this part of the book out of the way before diving into the more exciting stuff. One of the most important lessons that I learned from this chapter is that you need to be careful of who you listen to when it comes to financial advice. There are so many people out there who have never built wealth themselves, but are still willing to share their opinions on how you should manage your money. If you're not careful, you could easily get caught up in the noise and end up making some terrible financial decisions. That's why it's so important to only listen to people who have actually accomplished what you're trying to achieve. In the book, Jess shares the story of how he used to listen to people who were just full of shit when it came to financial advice. He would watch YouTube videos and listen to podcasts, but he was never able to find anyone who had actually built real wealth. It wasn't until he started reading books and following people who had accomplished what he wanted to achieve that he was finally able to start seeing results himself. Chapter 2, How the Poor Spend Money. Now let's move on to something a bit more interesting, shall we? Chapter 2 is where Yas starts getting into the actual strategies that have allowed him to build wealth, and he begins by teaching us how the poor spend money. As you might imagine, most poor people tend to spend their money on things that are immediately gratifying, such as food, clothing, and entertainment. They rarely think about the future, and even less often do they plan for retirement. This is a big mistake because it's one of the main reasons why they remain poor. See, when you spend your money on things that bring you immediate gratification, you're not investing it in things that can appreciate in value. You could be spending your money on things like education or skills development, which could help you earn more money down the line. Or you could be investing your money in assets like stocks or real estate, which could generate passive income for years to come.
Right.
Instead, though, you choose to spend it on things that quickly wear out or lose value. By doing so, you're trapping yourself in a cycle of poverty. Now here's where things get really interesting. According to Yas, there's a much better way to spend your money if you want to build wealth. Rather than spending it on things that bring you immediate gratification, you should invest it in ways that can appreciate in value. For example, instead of buying the latest iPhone, you could use that money to buy stock in Apple. Or instead of going on a lavish vacation, you could invest in real estate. Sure, these options aren't as exciting as the alternatives, but they can pay off big time in the long run. Chapter 3, Credit Cards. In this chapter, Yas explains how the rich use debt to get richer. And he starts by breaking down one of the most controversial tools in the wealthy person's arsenal, the credit card. Most people use credit cards to their detriment, but the rich use them to their advantage. Here's how. Whenever you use a credit card, you're essentially borrowing money from the bank. The bank knows that you don't have the money to pay back the loan when it's due, so they charge you interest. The interest rate on credit cards is usually pretty high, which means that if you don't pay back your loan quickly, you'll end up owing a lot of money. This is a huge mistake that most people make. They use credit cards to buy things they want but can't afford, and then they never pay off the balance, which results in them owing thousands of dollars in interest. On the other hand, The wealthy use credit cards to their advantage by paying off the balance in full every month. Since they don't owe any interest, they're essentially getting a loan from the bank that they don't have to pay back until next month. With this extra cash, they're able to buy things that will appreciate in value, such as stocks or real estate. By doing so, they're using debt to their advantage to grow their wealth. Now, not everyone is disciplined enough to pay off their credit card balance in full each month. And if you're not, then it's probably best to avoid using credit cards altogether. However, if you can be trusted with this responsibility, then it's an excellent tool that can be used to build wealth. Just remember, it's important to use credit cards responsibly. Don't buy things you can't afford and always pay the balance in full each month. Chapter 4. House hacking. Another way the rich build wealth is through house hacking. But before I explain what that is, let me first tell you a quick story. Back when I was in college, I had a friend who was really struggling financially. Couldn't afford rent, food, or even basic necessities. One day, he came to me and asked if I could lend him some money. I didn't have much myself, but I gave him what I could. A few weeks later, he came to me again and asked for more money. At this point, I was starting to get annoyed, but I gave him another loan anyway. Fast forward a few months, and my friend had taken out hundreds of dollars from me. Not only that, but he had done the same to several of our other friends. In total, he had borrowed over $1,000 from us. Of course, none of us expected him to pay us back, but we were hoping at least that he would make an effort to do so. However, he didn't even try. He simply disappeared, and we never saw him again. He lost hundreds of dollars, and it was devastating. That's when I learned an important lesson about lending money. If you lend money to a friend, there's a good chance you'll never get it back. That's why it's best to avoid lending money to friends or family altogether. But that's not the only thing I learned from that experience. I also learned that if you want to help someone, the best way to do it is by giving them a job and helping them make money. That way they won't have to borrow money from you or anyone else. And that's exactly what my friend did. Started working hard, hustling every day to make money. Within a few years, he was making more money than I was, and he was able to pay back all the money he owed his friends, including me. He didn't just pay us back, but he actually gave us an additional 10% as a thank you for being understanding. And that's when I realized that the best way to help someone is by giving them a job and helping them make money. House hacking is just one way to do that. It involves buying a house and renting out a portion of it to tenants. The tenants will pay rent, which covers your mortgage payment. And if you're lucky, they might even cover your property taxes and insurance. This leaves you with some extra cash flow each month that you can use to invest in other properties or businesses. It's a great way to build wealth slowly over time. Plus, unlike lending money, it's unlikely that your tenants will ever screw you over like a bad friend would. I hope you guys enjoyed this summary of the Minority Mindset by Jaspreet Singh. If you did, please leave a like on this video and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.